Stuck inside my mind in this quarantine house. The light at the end of the tunnel isn't in sight. Where do I go to find someone to talk to about all of my flaws? You can validate me, tell me the lies. I searched until nothing there and missed online. Said I'm anxious and depressed and my coping skills are not fine. We weren't a fit and it felt like a waste of time. I heard an interview and I felt an instant connection. I learned CAT, BBD and mindfulness skills and teaching every session. I'm going through, ready to ask the next question. The next question. The next question. The next question. The next question.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider making a donation to the podcast via Venmo to the username @NQCATX. Hello and welcome to NextQuest podcast, where I ask your potential therapist questions so you don't have to. I am your host, Noah S. Garcia, licensed professional counselor supervisor. Today, I welcome to the show Lisa Wheeler, licensed professional counselor who will be discussing her practice in an area of specialty, clients with non-ordinary experiences. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I've been looking forward to this episode.
Me too.
So tell us, what are your credentials and experience?
Well, like you, I am a licensed professional counselor, and Masters of Arts, and yeah, those are my credentials.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to TCU for undergrad, and I was a special education major, and I was a teacher from my first career. I worked in a special ed classroom in middle school, and then I went to St. Edward's to get my master's in counseling.
Cool. So does your practice have a name, or is it your name, or what is it there?
Well, the name of my website, just the web address, is Lisa Wheeler Therapy. But when you go to it, I actually I guess sort of the non-formal name for my practice is Resilience Therapy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you accept insurance in your practice? If so, which ones? If not, why not?
I do not accept insurance. I don't think I could even keep up with that whole gig. Yes. And I tend to not be great at like super technical things. And so I just opted not to. Now that being said, I do leave a certain number of appointments for sliding scale. And I also have one client that's totally pro bono. So that's how I accommodate different financial situations.
So is it a like true sliding scale, or would it be more of like a reduced fee?
It's a reduced fee. I do have kind of a formal, it's on my website. I do offer students and definitely people who are going through the counseling program and interning a pretty reduced rate of $85.
Nice.
So yeah. And then right now I'm sliding from my regular weight is 150 and then I can slide to 120.
Okay, cool. Cool. Do you have any weekend or evening appointments?
Not right now. Occasionally I will do something on the weekends. I do work with families and I have made kind of special exceptions for like, if that's the one time, then everybody can get together and we will kind of just, knock it out in several hours sometimes. But no, otherwise, you don't want to see me on weekends or nights because it's just not my best time either to work. So yeah.
Makes sense.
Pretty typical hours. Yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned that being a special education teacher was your first career, right?
Yes, it was.
Okay, cool. How long did you do that for?
Not very long. At 3 years, I think. That's in addition to the student teaching portion. But yeah, it looking back on it, I absolutely loved the kids and I loved the work. It was working in a school setting. It wasn't very comfortable for me, and I felt it was just I didn't vibe with it. That's all I can kind of say. So
I can get with that.
But I did love the job, and I loved working with those kids. And I do think it definitely kind of bleeds into like the way that I do therapy as well. So
cool.
Yeah.
What drew you to being a therapist?
I have wanted to be a therapist for quite a long time. Starting in, I think, middle school or high school, I was very drawn to pretty dense, like, books that were like character heavy. I'm trying to think. I mean, I read One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I think when I was in 8th or 9th grade, and I did a book report on it. And I was just like, this is so fascinating. Just kind of mental illness and people with those kinds of mental issues have always been fascinating. And yeah, I love those books. Like, like, trying to think of, I mean, Donna Tartt's one of my favorite writers. She wrote The Secret History. I mean, you like the books that really, really get you into the characters. Like, those are my favorite books. And I remember telling a really good friend of mine's mom way back when that, and this is so clear, I just remember being like, if I could do anything with my life, I would be a therapist. So it's been with me for a while. I just needed to, I definitely wasn't ready to do it after, my bachelor's. I needed to definitely grow up some and to kind of prepare for it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, what are your hobbies, interests, TV shows you're watching, music you're listening to, pets, kids, etc.?
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, I do have 2 kids. They're teenagers, so I have my hands very, very full. I have a 15-year-old boy and an 18-year-old girl. We are a 2-household family, so the kids go kind of back and forth between my house and their dad's, and we're on great terms, by the way. So that's been pretty good for everybody. We are very pet heavy. My kids just are really good, like, with animals around them a lot. I am too. We have 2 dogs, 2 cats. We just got a kitten that kind of came to us. And we have 4 guinea pigs and 3 rats and a snake.
Nice.
We have like a whole farm over here.
Is it like a ball python or?
I can't remember what it is. My son bought it with his Christmas money, and I don't really have much to do with the snake. It's fine. It like wraps around my arm sometimes, and it's pretty cool. That sounds familiar. But I don't really remember. I don't remember what kind it is. Yeah. Other questions? What?
Could that be like a snake assisted therapy? Like,
oh yeah.
Is that a thing?
No, I hadn't thought of the snake. Actually, Noah, I was actually thinking more. I do bring one of my dogs to therapy sometimes. We're a dog-friendly office. So I have one client who always brings their dog in as well, and I'm cool with that. So I really want to bring a guinea pig or 2 in at some point. They are I had no idea, they're very calming animals. And they're very sweet, and they'll just kind of, sit there with you and make their cute little noises. And it just gives you all the good chemicals. So I haven't gotten there yet. They're still babies, and we're still trying to sort of figure out like what we're doing with them. So
I'd be a little nervous with the guinea pigs and the snake.
You'd be nervous with the guinea pigs, what?
And the snake.
Oh, yeah.
And the rats, dinner.
Oh no, I wouldn't bring rats. But No, the rats are cute. They're pretty easy.
Rats are cool pets, and they're really smart.
Yes, they are. Yeah. So let's see. That's my home life. I'm always reading. I have several books going at a time. I love anything from I like stories about magic. So I love fiction. I love historical fiction. My favorite book is The Night Circus. I've read it about 4 times. I just listened to it on audio. It's a great audio book. And I also, of course, just like you probably have like several therapy type books going.
Oh yeah.
Yes. So I love reading and I love watching movies. I love ghost stories. Like I love the whole paranormal kind of genre, like mystery stuff. I love comedy. On Friday nights, I usually cook dinner and I have something really funny on and drink wine and be silly. What else do I do? I love swimming. I love traveling. Yeah, and just being with my friends, hanging out, going to dinner. Yeah, I'm pretty low key. And I love going to concerts. So I've definitely been missing movies and concerts during this whole COVID thing. So
yeah.
You mentioned music. I pretty much like any kind. I have classical music playing all the time in my bedroom. And I would say the only kind of music I don't really like so much is I'm not a big rap fan, but my gosh, my kids are, so ugh. And the new country, not keen on new country.
Gotcha.
But old country is awesome.
Yeah, like Hank Williams, Johnny Cash, those good old days.
Yeah.
I'm also very interested in parapsychology. It's been an interest of mine since I was a little kid. And I'm currently rewatching all the old seasons of Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack. It's on the Peacock network for free.
Oh my goodness. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
That sounds cool.
I love Robert Stack's voice. Well.
Yeah. Yes, me too.
It's so soothing to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love a good mystery.
Yeah, I was also a Nancy Drew kid. Hardy Boys, all the mysteries.
Yes. Yeah.
So getting back to your practice, what modalities do you draw upon?
Well, I think first and foremost, I definitely do a lot of just like improvisation, working in the moment. That's kind of like my, that always kind of trumps anything else. Just really trying to meet the client where they are and like what I think they're would be helpful to supporting them. And so of course, I definitely attachment based. I do consider myself just a trauma-informed human being in general. So always very conscious of being a very direct and clear and therapist with grace. I don't know where that came from, but definitely existential. And then I actually started studying transpersonal psychology because that really spoke to me just in my own experiences, which is it's kind of like that, whole like beyond the humanness realm. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So
and then family systems for sure, because I do a lot of like helping teens and parents and families. So that of course ties in.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you define what non-ordinary experiences are and the different ways in which they may present?
Yes. So non-ordinary experiences, in my definition, just means anything that kind of falls outside the cultural norms. So that could mean like the person is hearing voices, seeing visions, feels like they can hear people's thoughts, telepathy, very vivid, lucid dreaming, kind of where they feel like they're still in dreams when they wake up. seeing ghosts, any of those kinds of experiences, quite frankly, that people are afraid to talk about because other people would say, I think you're hallucinating, or you need to go to the, you need to go to the mental hospital.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. What sorts of issues regarding those things? I mean, other than that can be quite alarming and scary, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
What sorts of issues do those things cause for people?
What sorts of issues? I think it just is something that can really startle people, and until you experience something like that, you really don't you don't really know how you're going to be, because you just can't imagine it, because it's almost like you're existing kind of in a different way than you were before. And so it's, everybody's got sea legs when it comes to that. So it can be, for some people, very destabilizing. And then it just sometimes, like, all that stress just, can almost just be like pouring gasoline on top of it. Yeah, I would say, to answer your question, just a lot of anxiety, Yeah.
So it sounds like anxiety is a common clinical focus then.
Yes, definitely. Okay. Anxiety, and then, isolation too, just because a lot of people feel like there's something wrong with them. They're weird, they're crazy, they don't want to tell anybody. So there's a lot of kind of hiding. Yeah.
How did you come about specializing in working with this population, and what got you interested in working with clients presenting with not ordinary experiences?
I had some of those experiences myself. And it was, I definitely would categorize it as it was a very loud, and by I mean loud, I just mean it was very pronounced, very sudden, very destabilizing for me. I just started having them almost from one day to the next, and it lasted for the heavy part of it, where it was going on all the time, kind of in all ways. Went on for maybe 6 months. And then it kind of started to slide down into a lot of like very, very serious depression after that. And then I perked back up a little bit when I found a really great therapist that I felt comfortable with, which I just needed so very badly. And they actually, some of those experiences started to come back, but they were softer, they were more manageable, and I could talk to her about them. And that continued for a few years. And now I really just don't have them anymore. Or it's just, my experiences like that are very different.
Yeah.
And so when I was going through that, I really did not know where to turn, because it was not subtle. It was like something was screaming at me, and or trying to get my attention. And it was really, really intense. And I was just like, I don't know how I can talk to like a regular therapist about this, because I'm afraid they're going to say that I'm nuts, but I know I'm not nuts, but they might think I'm nuts. And what if they have me committed? And so I actually went the kind of like the new age route with it. Well, I ran into some really beautiful and helpful people, and then I ran into some really, really harmful people that really, unfortunately, made my experience far more serious than it actually needed to be, and made things a lot worse for me. So I can go more into that at some point, but that's really important for like the way that I work. I'm pretty clear on what to do and what not to do, because of that issue that I had with those kind of new age light workers, I guess I would call them. So,
well, tell us a little bit about that, like what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. So, So I really wanted to, as I was going through my own healing process from all of that, I realized, I saw like kind of a gap in the, I guess the industry. Cause I really didn't, my therapist that helped me, a lot, she was a psychologist, but she'd also had some, kind of some different experiential training type stuff, like where I think she did some shamanic type of work with somebody out of the country. So she had some training that I guess is more like not as typical for therapists. So, here I come with my own set of experiences that I experienced, and I was able to work through them and thrive. So I wanted to sort of be this in-between person that could help people through those kinds of experiences, that was actually, clinically trained, but I also had that more of that edgy side to myself where I could handle, I knew kind of like how to work with like the energetic components of some of that, those non-ordinary experiences.
So what would you recommend to do and not to do?
Well, this is a hard and fast rule of mine, and is, how do I don't like the word psychic very much, because I feel like that's a very loaded word, but I am in the highly sensitive kind of empath category of personalities. And so when I went through all of that, that's kind of what fed in, to the intensity of it. And I definitely have a kind of a psychic side to myself. But I have a kind of a special way that I use it. I certainly don't read people or do anything like that. And I don't see anything wrong with that per se. I actually think it's really cool to go to mediums, and I went to one not too long ago and it was very helpful. But that's not a part of what I do. I just, my way of working with it's very quiet. My hard and fast rule with it is that, say I get like a kind of a hit or an instinct on something like that, and it prompts a question. I'm like, could it be this or this? And I'll just sort of present it to the client. And they always, always, always have the right to say, no, that's not it. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I make that really clear in the sessions, because it has to resonate with them, and it's not about me being right or wrong or whatever. I'm just trying to kind of like be like help them explore what these things could mean. So I am very careful about not projecting anything into like what they're going through. So an example is that, and maybe I'll feel or know things about the person. Like there's one woman I'm thinking of that I really suspected that she had been molested, and like early in her life, but I just held it, and eventually and she had a lot of like non-ordinary experiences herself, but I could kind of sense out, like, I think that's what some of this is some of that stuff coming to light. But it was like we worked with each other for like 2 years before she realized it herself. And then it was not as startling. It was, she was ready to kind of deal with it, and it wasn't so jarring. And so my point being is that I don't think it's good care, good compassionate care to really even like, if I'm so sure, say, you know what, I really think that, so, and you were harmed in this way, whether it's true or not. I just don't think I think that in my opinion does a lot of harm, because I know that you've probably been trauma trained, but it's like, the body knows what it can handle, what it can't. And if it's not ready to come up, then there's some part that's not quite ready. Right. So I'm really careful about the just the projective part of the working with the intuition.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, how does one go about treating a client with non-ordinary experiences when most people would attribute the symptom set to like psychosis?
Well, and sometimes it is. So I have worked with, and I see people from 12 and over. I've had a few teens come in with psychosis or even schizophrenia diagnosis, which I'm appalled that somebody would diagnose somebody with schizophrenia who was 15. But I just don't. I think their brains are just still so pliable, and it just. I'm not a big supporter of making those kinds of grand claims at that age, but so it doesn't really matter what it is to me, as far as like, is it psychosis? Is it, who knows what it is? Is it just their thoughts are super animated and like they hear talking and that's just the way their brain works? Like, or, it's something weird going on in their house. I mean, it can be any of those things, but we work together on it, just to try to sort of tease out what it is and what are we going to do about it.
Mhm.
And it's a collaborative process. I mean, sometimes if somebody is in like, major crisis, I'll be a lot more, direct, or I'll, recommend. I don't even know if I've ever recommended. Well, yes, I did have to have like one of the clients had to go into like an inpatient type thing before. Um, but yeah, I mean, my hope is too that like we'll skip that part. The hope is that we can catch it before it just spins out of control, because when somebody's experiencing that kind of stuff and it's a lot, they're really vulnerable. And so when you're vulnerable and raw, like everybody else's fears just go right into you. And so it can just make everything so much worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also ask about their spiritual orientation, like where, like what they believe in, if anything, like, or what creates meaning for them. That's really important. And, no matter what it is, I do, I try to respect that and kind of, we will maybe use some of that kind of framework to sort of make sense of their experiences. So I really, again, it's kind of, I try to keep it, like,
It's very individually
like
independent, it sounds
yes.
like. Yeah.
Right. And it's very personal too. I mean, spirituality to me is very personal, and it's, we all, feel very differently about it. So I definitely incorporate that when I can. But no, it's not that much different than what other therapists do. Like if they're working with any other kind of disorder or mental issue, it's just, it's just sitting with it. What does it feel like? I'm not somatic experienced trained, but I do know how to kind of work with the body. We'll work with some of the emotions that are coming up, try to name them. Does it feel familiar? Does it feel not familiar? Like, what does it remind you of? What comes to mind? Are you seeing anything in your mind's eye? Like any number of those kinds of things, we'll work with. And again, it's when it makes sense to them, it makes sense to them. It's not really makes sense to me. So,
right.
Yeah.
In your experience, and I know that this is very individually based and it's hard to give like a blanket answer. But in your experience, what sorts of things would you say differentiate non-ordinary experiences from psychosis? Just for practitioners out there who, would be interested in being able to maybe differentiate the two.
It's really funny because that is like one of like the world's biggest questions. I mean, I've been in all kinds of like spiritual forums and everybody's like, is it spiritual or is it psychosis? And, there's always this kind of like this, and there's people in one camp and there's people in another camp. And so I really don't have the answer to that. It's more, I don't know. I feel like it can be very demeaning to say that it is psychosis when, to me, it's like, I think what I err on the away from using that terminology, or labeling, because I really don't think it, like, if you just say psychosis, then you basically just like, oh my gosh, this person, like, they're talking nonsense. Well, it's actually not nonsense. It's important information, and like what they're reporting has meaning, and it's important, and you need to look at it, because we don't know what in the world could have caused the psychosis. We don't know. I mean, they could have some massive trauma or random trauma, or who knows even what it is that is making them super paranoid,
Mm-hmm.
So,
it's a hard question. I know.
It is a hard question. And I don't really know that there's a definitive answer, because as you know, like, these things really can't be, like, it's not like a test you can take, so to speak. But, well, there is one, okay, here is one difference. If someone is saying something that really just doesn't make sense, kind of like word salad, like I remember this woman that I worked with, and that was homeless. I mean, she said something that couldn't possibly be true. It was something that didn't make any sort of sense. Well, yes, like that, I guess that would be
thought disorder.
Yes, right. But a lot of people, in my opinion, they're either labeled bipolar or, or psychotic or whatever. I mean, there's more to it. It's not that simple. And I do think it's important to look at what they're actually experiencing and the stories that they tell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things is working with people who have a traditional diagnosis of schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder. It's just like, even though somebody may be communicating to you in a way that is different from the way we would traditionally communicate with each other, there's still a message in their communication. Like, you got to read between the lines to figure out, what is this person trying to say to me? What is it that they want? And there's always, if you can read between the lines, there's always a message there. And it's not to be dismissed. Like, you can't just be like, oh, well, I don't understand this person, I'm not going to pay attention to them. Like, no, they are telling you something very specific. You just have to read between the lines enough to know what it is.
Right. And who's to say that if somebody tells me that they talk to, like, a purple dragon on the side of their bed every night, well, I don't know if that's true. It could be true. I mean, I don't act like, I don't pretend like I'm going to say that's not true. Well, because it really might be. I'm not them. And if it helps them, I mean, I would ask them, what is the dragon saying? Like,
yeah,
is he cool? I don't know. I mean, and if, because these imaginary things, I say imaginary, I don't mean that they're imagining them. I'm saying, like, that they're, mystical. They can also be very helpful, to the person, and they're there for a reason. So, yeah.
So I would imagine, just kind of as a result of, people having non-ordinary experiences, that there's also probably a lot of shame and guilt to contend with regarding that ability or gift, and maybe even guilt at the potential visions or dreams or, things somebody could have access to.
Very true. Yes. And I, unfortunately, I feel like we have a long way to come in that way. I think we go back and forth between being very dismissive of it and shaming of it. And then we have, especially in Austin, we have, I'm sorry, but everybody acts like they're a guru and they're a spiritual master. And, like, there's that whole other kind of more narcissistic side to it. So, and they're, it's very grandiose. And, I really hope to normalize some of these experiences, because I think that's what it needs to be. I don't think we need to, like, overly sensationalize it, because it's just, I mean, it's a part of life. I mean, there's a lot of things that we know about in this world that we can't see, and yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yes. Have you noticed, this is an interesting question, and you again may or may not have an answer, Are there common triggers to having these sorts of experiences?
It could be anything from, somebody dies to just a move. I mean, just some kind of big change, something. Or, in my own case, it was something's not right with me and I don't know what it is. Like I feel off and I don't know even how to express that or explain it, but I felt very, very constricted and like it was vague. I was just like, what is going on? So it could be, just maybe like a sense like that, or, something happens. Like, I mean, it is true that, if you have some abuse history and you have children, when the children get to be the age where when your abuse started, that can be a really huge trigger too. I've seen that in several cases. So, it's that whole, like the body remembers and, kind of like you said, it's like, what's the underlying message? Like, what is this person really trying to like communicate here through these experiences that they're having?
What are your thoughts on the medical model, and what about medications?
I'm totally fine with medication. I think that there's definitely a time and a place for it. I have taken medication several times in my life, and it's actually been beneficial. I do. I mean, there are like, as far as like schizophrenia and those kinds of issues, like the antipsychotics, I do tend to be like, oh, I wish I really, it'd be great if they didn't need to be on those. So, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know like all the specifics about antipsychotics, but what most people report is very, very flat effect. It like kind of just takes all the personality out of the person. And, but no, I think medication and therapy go hand in hand. I think that it can make a lot of sense for some people. But the medical model, I do not have any DSM, anything in my office or lobby. I don't know. I just find it to be so incomplete and disrespectful in a way to the person's experiences, because all it is a bunch of symptom clustering, and it doesn't really take into account, the depth and nuance of the person's experience. So yeah, it's kind of, and in there, I do believe that and here's a paradox. I'm also not against diagnoses. Like I think that realizing that you have ADHD or realizing that you have major depression, I mean, that's certainly really important information, and it does kind of make it real to like get a piece of paper and be like, yes, that's I knew that there was something going on. So in that way, it can really help validate somebody's experience so that they can, move forward. But one of the things that my therapist said that I use a lot is that she said, a diagnosis is just where you are today. So it's kind of just like a stopping point. Like it's not like a life sentence. Now for things like autism and Asperger's and all of that, I mean, yeah, of course that makes a lot of sense. And some of those developmental disorders. So I'm a real stickler about, I don't like to put like limitations on people's experiences. And that's what I feel like, some of the DSM does, is it's just like, oh, you're this and oh, you're this. So,
yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I think that's kind of your whole thing.
Yeah. Right. Because the whole term personality disorders, I mean, I understand, but it's pretty offensive to say, and, when most of that is caused from, just really major needs not being met really early in life. So, I mean, I may not want to be best friends with that person or something, but yeah, like they're suffering. So.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you attribute non-ordinary experiences to?
To me, the simplest way to attribute them is that it indicates some kind of stress. And I don't mean like stress, like, oh, I'm stressed out about that test stress. I'm talking about could be any kind of stress, like meaning like something's overwhelming the system, something either, whether it's, whether it's, a very sensitive person in a very too open of an environment for them, whether it's, unhealthy family dynamic that's causing stress, whether it's neglect oriented, whether it's something going on even in the body, like an illness, or, I often just say, I mean, like, I have like my thoughts talk, that's just me. And so oftentimes I'll know, when I'm stressed because it's not the same as when I had all the stuff back then, but like, I just kind of have that kind of a brain. So it's just like, oh yeah, I hear that. Thank you. So to me, it's like an overwhelming of something. It's like a signal. And even in cases where there's like a haunting in the house or something, again, it's overwhelm in the area or something. And it could be too, a thin place, like a place where maybe the energy is more pure and clear and there's just more ability to sort of touch the other side.
So like a portal?
Yeah, like a portal. Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah, I totally dig that.
Yeah. So, and I do think that, in a lot of cases too, the clients will report, yeah, my mom or my aunt has these kinds of things happening, or my dad or whatever. I definitely see it in like the family line a lot. So I think that also has, something to do with it.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And I'm always really grateful for that because I'm like, oh my gosh, good. You can go talk to your aunt about what's going on, usually. So
yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what kind of training do you have that helps you work with these clients?
Well, I would say that 99.5% of everything that I bring into the therapy room is just because of my own therapy and going through my stuff, because it was a lot and I was really working on it, for a good, from 2008 until, through grad school. So, which was 2011, 12, 13, 14, something like that. But, so yeah, most of it was what I went through. So that definitely, because I can kind of gauge where people are and I can be like, oh, I know what they feel like, or I can have a sense. I don't know what they feel like. But I can sense, I think this is where they are. But no, and then I love reading, I love reading about, nonviolent communication, any of those types of books are so helpful. Just I love Terry Real. I think I'm saying his name right, like with the whole couples therapy stuff and family systems. I don't really have like a spiritual orientation myself. If it's anything, I'm probably like a Mother Nature chick. Like there's a benevolent other. I don't know what it is, but it's out there. And I definitely feel close to it when I'm in nature and water. Mm-hmm. So that's about the extent of my spiritual, like where I am in that way. Oh, I am a Reiki master. So, and what that looks like is, for me, is that have you been Reiki trained?
I have not.
Okay. I actually think it's really good to do if you're a really sensitive person. Whether or not you become a Reiki person, like I don't practice Reiki in the traditional way because it can't touch people, right? So, but I believe that the energy of Reiki comes through in words. So it can open you. It can just kind of open you up more, to where you can just, in my opinion, kind of tap in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's that type of energy work? It's like, is it Qigong? Or is that?
Yeah, I don't know much about that. I've heard of it, but it's really interesting.
It's very interesting.
Yes.
Because you don't necessarily touch people when you do that.
No.
It's a more manipulation of energy than anything else.
Right. And it's also just kind of, I think we can use, as therapists, we can use those kinds of trainings very differently than, like, say, other people that are going to be like very directly trained. I try to go for things that will like help me either see people in a new way, like in a different perspective, or, just sort of, it opens me up somehow in some way. Not so that I can say, oh, your dead grandfather's standing behind you or anything. It's more just like, but you can use those skills subtly and respectfully too.
Right.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. So training, I mean, I think, I've done a lot of, like, I'm in a psychopomp class right now, which is like a mediumship class. So I'm taking that, through the summer, which is super interesting. And then, I'll do like the more normal CEU stuff, just like anybody else. Just whatever is interesting. I love learning about addiction, reading about addiction a lot. I'm really passionate about that as well. So.
Okay. Very cool. A lot of different trainings.
Yes.
So when a client who is struggling with non-ordinary experiences goes into crisis, what do these generally look like, and how do you go about de-escalating these crises?
Well, it's kind of like a speeding train. It's like once it's on the track, it's on the track. It can mimic like a manic episode. I know that's what mine looked like in the beginning. I don't have bipolar 1. But I remember my therapist said that that's what she thought at first, but then she realized that's not what was going on. But yeah, it looks like somebody that is just out of control. I mean, they're saying things that you've never heard them say before. They're just kind of, they're ungrounded, and and they don't know what to do with it. And so, and I've worked with a couple people that came in like that. It's more just, what you don't want to do is like tell them what they're seeing and hearing and feeling is not real. That is, don't do that. Right. Yeah, that's so harmful. You just you just want to convey like, hey, I'm here with you. I'm not leaving. We're going to work through this together. I don't know what it is either. Never be afraid to say you don't know what it is, because we really don't. It's, part of the mystery part. And be like, look, what do you, I don't know. Like, and they'll just, we just kind of sit, and you just try to be that stable presence, because, it's just, they can just keep going, but you can kind of like talk to the family and just say, look, like, let's before we do anything, let's just, maybe let's meet a couple times a week, and just see if she can kind of feel, or he get more settled and more grounded. And I mean, that's the key, is to like, you want to convey that you believe them, and that you're not gonna, you don't judge them, and you don't think that they're crazy. Yeah.
Do you ever get scared or fearful?
I did once, that I can recall. I mean, yes, there have been a couple clients that, I think it was just more like, I think there was one time when, this is not like related to paranormal, but like I did my practicum in a homeless shelter, and I was talking to this woman, and at some point she just like reached down and like put this huge knife on the table, and I was like, oh my goodness. It really freaked me out inside. And I remember, I was still in school. I remember I was like, I can't see that. I can't see that lady anymore. I feel afraid for myself and for my own safety. So that's one instance. And the other instance that comes to mind is there was this lady that came to me who thought she was possessed by some demons. And again, I think a lot of the stuff that goes on with us, like energy wise, can look like that, for real. And it may be, I'm not here to say that that's not true. So,
attachments.
Yeah. And I remember she was an older lady, and I remember feeling uncomfortable, like more so than I ever have. And I remember I think she looked out the window. She's like, yeah, there's one right in that tree out there. And, I don't know, like that definitely, I continued to see her, and I continued to help her. I don't feel like anything like followed me home or anything, but I do remember kind of being like I think I swallowed pretty loud, and like, oh, I hope somebody else is in this building, because I might need help. But yeah, but those are the only 2 times.
Which kind of brings me a little bit to the next question. Is there anything specific you do to prepare yourself and or your space for working with clients with non-ordinary experiences?
Well, yes. So, and this is the way I live too. So this is like, it's like, it's the same in my office it is as in my house. And this is something I also try to kind of teach clients to do, is to like create rituals that are very personal and meaningful to them, to protect the space. So for me, cactus is like a plant that kind of is like that spiny plant that is to me just kind of is a kind of a protection type of plant. So I have a couple cactuses and pictures of cactuses. And also candlelight for me. I always work with candles in my office. So I have a candle for the client, a candle for me, and a candle for the witness, just kind of in general. So those 3 are lit, and it just kind of, like, it's like marking that this is like a sacred, like holy place that we're here to hopefully provide, some relief from suffering and help this person get what they need. And I do that at home too. I have a time at night when I light candles, and with the intention that, only beings that are like, safe for us, or that are loving beings, are allowed in this space. It's kind of a rumbly way of like the intention that's behind the candles. And, I have smells. I have the woman that I share the office space with. We each have our own offices, but it's really cool. She's like an energy worker. Like, she does like trauma release, and she makes these amazing Reiki oils and sprays, and they smell incredible, and they have different like intentions behind them. So I actually use those in my home and in office as well, just as a clearing. And I always make sure to have a lot of plants around. I'm a very plant-oriented person. So I think it's good for air clearing and all of that. Mm-hmm. We don't have magazines in our space. I kind of feel like can be, I don't know, it just doesn't really fit, I think, with the vibe. And I'm not against magazines. It's just like, I just kind of want it to be clear of any kind of, magazines can be kind of exploitive, Sure. Yeah. I did have a really sensitive person. I was like, I don't have any books in my office, or I have very few. And that's a personal thing with me. I remember like being in my therapist's office, like always scanning all these books and being like, oh no, like, I don't know why. It kind of intimidated me or something. So I think I have a couple stacked up that I just have there that I'm reading, but I don't have a big bookshelf. And then in my office, but in the lobby, we have some books. And one of my most sensitive clients, I was like, can you tell me, like, is there any book that like bothers you, or that where you feel like either shamed and she picked, there was one and I removed it from that because I really kind of want to create, like, we want to create a comfortable place. So, and again, like, this is all stuff that I can talk to clients about too, that will help them be more intentional and try to have more like a healing type of space. Yeah.
What advice do you have for individuals who are having distressing, non-ordinary experiences?
Yeah, it can be really, really scary. Just, what would I say? I believe you. What you're seeing and you're feeling is real. Not sure what's going on, but it's something that needs to be talked about with the right person. So, I would also just, I also, advocate sometimes like taking a shower and doing like a clearing, like, may I release all that doesn't belong to me, and kind of imagine it, showering off and going down the drain, eating kind of heavy food, because if you think about it, like, they're all up in the air, and so you want to bring them back down to earth, so any activities that are grounding, like jump in the pool, try to like incorporate, like, get back in your body some, any push-ups, sit-ups, things like that.
Gotcha.
And also just, I mean, most of the time, like, especially with teenagers, it goes away. So, like, if you can kind of take it in and like wonder about it, and like a lot of times it just kind of, those things will evaporate. I'm not saying that I promise they will, but that's what can happen. It's definitely not a life sentence.
What about advice for families, partners, and friends of people who have non-ordinary experiences?
I would try very hard not to jump to the, oh my God, they need to go to the mental hospital or the inpatient setting. That can be, I have a lot of people that come back from there with really traumatic, it's really hard when, like, you're ripped out of your home or whatever and family. So just finding somebody that can help ground them, and no blaming or shaming, or they did not do this to themselves by any means. So and just try to be open, because a lot of this, like, butts up to like a lot of conditioning that we've had, like, about what's normal, what's possible, what's okay, what's sinful, what's, are you a witch? Ooh, that's bad. Like, we have all these ideas, and this pushes at some of those. And so, but these poor people, they need help, because on the other side, there's a lot of possibility. So, and I love helping the families too. So, and I have some books that I recommend. There's one called Young People Hearing Voices, I think, that's really helpful, because in other countries, this stuff is not as, it is more normalized. It's not so drama laden. It's like, okay, well, so.
Yeah. Is there anything that I haven't asked about non-ordinary experiences that you think would be helpful to go over a little bit?
Animals can also be really helpful for these folks, just at helping them feel more peaceful and more grounded. Dogs, cats, whatever they're into. So that's just another thing I wanted to mention. And there's also the folks that may have always had these kinds of experiences. Now, I was somebody that had mine happened all of a sudden. But there are some people who have kind of always lived with it and just maybe not ever known how to talk about it. That's another whole situation that we really didn't talk about. But yeah.
What's important to note about working with folks who have experienced it for most of their lives?
To me, those folks are pretty interesting because I'm like, yeah, like you just somehow just remained quite open throughout your life. You know, I would just kind of, there's not much to know, I guess. It's just sort of like, it wasn't like a sudden onset. So they've had more time to sort of, adapt to and kind of, I guess, integrate this way that they are. Rather versus like it being thrown, but them being thrown into it. So, but it can still be hard. It could be that this person has never told anybody that she has these experiences or he has these experiences. So they're just looking to just be like, listen to what happens to me sometimes. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's switch gears for a second to talk more about you as a therapist.
Okay.
So my first question regarding these is, what kind of experience do you have working with particularly vulnerable clients, such as those who are transgender, undocumented, or BIPOC, to name a few examples?
I've definitely worked with a few of them because, well, I mean, it's similar in vulnerability to those cases, and so there's even just a higher need for more trauma-informed care, and also letting them educate me on, well, that goes without saying, but I think especially in those cases, letting them educate me on what they've gone through, what is helpful, what is not helpful. I want to know all of those things. Just being open to what they've gone through as people. Yeah.
Okay. What could a new client expect from an initial session with you, and what about on an ongoing basis?
Well, on the first session, I always do like an hour and a half intake session where I do usually take some notes. I don't usually take notes in my session, but I definitely have to in the first session just to kind of, it's a lot of information to take in and I don't want to forget important pieces. So, I talk a lot about the way that I work because I have been told that is really helpful, especially to teenagers. I will say I'm not going to share with your parents what we talk about in the sessions. Like there is a lot of people that do that and they lose a lot of teenagers that way. And so I'm really firm with the parents about that. I'm like, I'm not going to talk to you. This is our time. Now, that being said, if the teen tells me something that I really do feel like their parents need to know, then we'll talk about it together and we'll decide, okay, this is something that your parents need to know about that you're sharing with me. What do you think? Do you want to commit to telling them yourself? Do you want us to do it together? Like what feels best? So it's always a very collaborative effort, and which goes a really long way with teenagers. So I talk a lot about the way that I work, and also, if I ask somebody a question, I know just like what you did with me earlier, and I'm like, I don't really want to talk about that. Okay, let's switch gears. Like you're in charge. So, it's not. I think a lot of people come into therapy just being like they have to just like sort of react to the therapist and like do like. They ask a question, I answer. Like it doesn't really have to feel like that. So, I talk about the different kinds of sessions that we can have. That, if it's a family coming in, we can do like single sessions. I can do, parent child. We could do all of them. There's all these different variations. Most of the time I start out with the person that's having the most distress, and I work with them for a while, and then we can incorporate other family members if needed, if that is helpful. I really try to, I let them ask about me. I'm like, I do share with clients that I have had experiences, myself. And so I do have that experiential understanding of like sort of what it's like, to be in your shoes and have these experiences, like, and how weird it feels. And I let them ask. I always ask about previous therapy experiences. What was good, what was bad, what did you learn, what worked for you, what didn't work for you. So it's basically just kind of like taking a hit, like just sharing about how I work and what it looks like. At the beginning session, I always take, write down goals. What do you want to get out of this? Which, can always change from time to time, but I'll kind of keep that as the focus. Like, okay, like for this client, we're really working on these 3 things. So I'll kind of like, just sort of, it goes where it goes, right? Like we talk about what we need to talk about, but I do try to kind of bring it back to goals, just to sort of provide, just to kind of keep us focused, and we can always change the goals. So, I do, like if somebody has anxiety or depression or any of those, or self-harming or suicidal thinking, I do a lot of like, just like 1 to 10 Likert scale stuff, and I take that each time and kind of track it. And if it's an underage person, I let mom and dad know that I'm going to be tracking. And, so that's kind of the way that I, just take self-reports each time for those clients that are a little bit more like wobbly, but yeah, like I kind of usually just let them, if they know what they want to talk about, go. And then, or I'm like, or would you just rather me ask you some questions and I'll just start the conversation? Which of course is like, tell me about your family.
Good question.
Yeah. What all of us therapists want to know. So, yeah. And then I always do try to kind of, and then we decide, are we going to meet once a week or every other week, or, what's the frequency going to be? And then I usually try to give a few good coping skill nuggets for them, things to try next week. Try this, see if this works, and I'll ask you about it. So I definitely try to give them something to take with them in terms of like, oh, okay, I'm going to, try this.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah.
How would you say your clients would describe or experience you?
Well, I know that I hope to be very disarming. That's my goal, with my whole like just sense of presence, and that I'm understanding. I have been told that I'm typically go really far with the misfit kids, the kids that are so anxious they can't go to school for, they feel safe and comfortable. I can also be very direct, and I am not shy about telling, especially like parents, like what they need to hear sometimes. But I mean, all parents are doing their best that they can, but sometimes they need a little bit of pushing, and I'll wield the velvet hammer, so to speak, when needed.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Yes. In fact, I had one situation where a woman was going to address some very, very personal things with her father, and they were both in my office. And I actually, he got so upset and was about to hit her. And I had to he had a very aggressive, he was about to do something very aggressive. And I actually had to hop in front of her. And I just said, get out now, you need to leave. So that was the most intense thing I've ever gone through, probably.
Wow.
But yeah, and he still pays for her therapy. So, hey.
Well, you left an impression. Nobody had probably set that boundary with him before.
You're not going to do this in here. Yeah. So, yeah.
Are you a therapist who will laugh or cry with your clients?
I am. Yes, I am. And that's happened a lot. And I will say I'm getting really emotional right now and I'm tearing up. I'll mention it. Yeah, I'm like, if we I don't know. To me, it makes sense that we're affected by our clients and that we show them that we're affected, and that how they affect us. And I'll even say, oh my gosh, I'm really, really angry on your behalf right now. I literally am fuming, if they tell me something that happened and, oh yeah, for sure. And yes, I'm a huge humor person. Anytime you can put humor in when it's appropriate, I will.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
How do you define holding space for someone?
It's hard to define. It's more just the way of how you are. I did a lot of internship hours at Hospice Austin. So I did a lot of bereavement work. And I would say that was a lesson in holding space for sure, because they, a lot of times would just sit, clients would just want to sit and cry. And that, you're just there to be what they need, without poking in there with my own stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's just kind of being what I don't know. It's hard to explain, Noah.
It is.
It's just I don't know. It's just, I think for me, it's the reflecting part. Just reflecting back, I can see how upset you are. This is so devastating. I think it's just that kind of just being more the quiet, validating presence of where they are.
And meeting them where they're at, like you had talked about earlier.
Right. Yes. I'm not opposed to holding hands with somebody if I feel like it would help, or touching their shoulder or any of that stuff. I think sometimes that can be really comforting.
Yeah, holding space is one of those things that we all say, and we all really mean essentially the same thing, but we all describe it differently. But it means the same thing. I don't know. It's been interesting, all the answers I've gotten to that question over time.
Well, and that's challenging. I'm sure you can relate because as a therapist brain, our brains are always going right. We're what next? Where are we going? And I mean, that requires it to just you got to shut that down for a while. And you just have to just be this person's kind of, nervous system, for lack of a better word.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What is the best advice you've ever received from a supervisor or spiritual teacher or guide?
Mm-hmm. So the first thing that comes to mind, I had a lot of that. First thing that comes to mind was at St. Edward's when this was said by Dr. Sunny Lansdale, who she taught human growth and development. She was also a really great therapist and a supervisor. But she was really cool because she would get really animated and let herself kind of be taken with her teaching, which I thought it was really cool that she would do that. She would get emotional and in a really good way. It's very effective. And she really cared a lot. It was very obvious. And this was just for me, something that spoke to me personally. We were talking about the teenage years and she said, the more, and I remember she said this with such conviction. And I remember I think I even got chills or something. It just like went all through me. She said, the more you can allow your teens to like do what they need to do and like, experience what they need to experience in those years, and do not take it personally, the better off they will be as adults. And I remember being like, okay, oh, like, wow. Like it's something very simple, but I really felt like, it was just powerful knowledge, and it has, I've thought of it, it's helped me with my own children raising, and it's also helped me working with teens, so I also, one time, another really valuable piece of advice was said by a priest at the time when I was having like the really big crisis stuff going on. I didn't know where to turn, and we were members of St. David's Episcopal Church downtown, and since a lot of the stuff I was seeing and hearing was kind of like, had spiritual elements to it, I went to talk to one of the priests there, and her name was Mary. I felt comfortable with her. And I just, it was just, I just looked like I had no idea what was going on. I was just like, I don't know what to do with all this. And I just remember like, so I went in, I think they can talk to us like 3 times. And then you have to go to like an actual therapist. But we were talking about, I think it was like at the time I was married, and he like, he had a lot of anger and all of this. I'm trying to think of how she put it. She said 2 things to me. She said, and I'd never had someone talk this way to me. She said, somebody's anger is always there for a good reason. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I'd always thought that anger was bad, a bad thing, or a scary thing. And I remember like it helped me like drop into a more compassionate space about what is anger, and because I think my spouse and I were fighting a lot at the time. So I was like, and I grew up in a household with, my dad had a pretty bad temper. So I was, that kind of stuff scares me, or did scare me. And then she also said something like, talking about my husband and I, he's a bully and you're a wimp, and neither one of them are godly. So, I mean, I don't know. It was like, it's kind of funny, but that hit me as well. I was like, damn straight. Okay. Like, I don't know. Just, and then, I had my stuff was related to some sexual abuse stuff that had happened a long time ago. And I remember, I think I had mentioned that to one of the priests there, and he actually said, Lisa, the same thing happened to me. And I had never had anyone talk that way to me or like be that revealing. And I just remember being like, from that moment, I was like, I'm going to be okay. I was in terrible shape at the time, but I was like, wow, like I can be okay. Like, look at this person. He's okay. So that was really, so I find disclosure, a lot of therapists will disagree with me. I find disclosure that is appropriately timed to be huge.
I agree.
Yeah. And I'm not making it about me. I'm literally like, you're not alone. So that's what I felt. And it's also encouraging because the person feels like absolute crap. So, anyway.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate when therapists self-disclose. I mean, in a therapeutic way.
Yeah, I did too. And my own therapist did that for me too. And again, it had very therapeutic benefits. I was just like, oh my gosh, you're a human. You've had horrible things happen. Oh my, it just was like, you really understand. Like, so for me, it was always, I had very positive experiences like of therapists or people, who were in kind of higher positions than me disclose. So,
okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. What have you personally learned about yourself and or the world through your practice?
I think just the most general thing that I could say is just that, there are so many ways of expressing our humanness, like infinite ways, and none of them are wrong or bad, or, it's like there's just so many varieties and ways that we express, either what we've been through, like just in general, not even what we've been through, just who we are. What have I learned about myself? I mean, kind of everything, because when I went through that whole crisis thing, I had to reassess my whole life from the very beginning. So that was something I had to do prior to working as a therapist. And I certainly don't think that, like, there was work I did along the way too. So it's not like you have to make sure that everything is done, because that's really not possible. But I really think therapists need to spend significant amount of time on the other side of the couch before. I just think it just helps.
I can never trust a therapist who hasn't done therapy themselves.
I feel the same way. I would be like, like, you've never been to therapy, so how do you know? Like, how do you even?
I just feel like that in and of itself, like, skews the power dynamic, the way it's perceived, even if just by the therapist themselves.
Right. No, I agree. Yep.
So what do you do to take care of yourself, Lisa?
Well, I grew up an only child, and so I'm pretty naturally introverted. I love being around people, but I like being around small groups. And so I just kind of have to take care of myself and make sure that I have kind of my own time each day, just to sort of wind down and lay down and just do what I need to do. So I like my private time. I just try to keep a somewhat regular schedule, 7 or 8 hours of sleep a night. I kind of subscribe to the whole, like, intuitive eating way of eating. So I try to listen to myself and about when I need to eat and what and all of that. I'm not on a diet at all, or I eat pretty much everything. Doing my rituals like candles and just taking care of myself, like knowing that I think, to me, one of the biggest markers of healing is when you can really, like, just reclaim kind of like yourself. And, like, if you've had hard times in childhood, well, you reclaim like that, like, it's your right. And so, I mean, doing fun things like playing, laughing, being silly, I'm a really silly person. Like, if people knew what I did, like, at home, they'd be like, oh, probably really embarrass people. But it's funny. I'm just really goofy. Dancing, I like to have music on. TV's a double-edged sword sometimes for me. I love good stories. I love watching, but it can be kind of overwhelming to my psyche. So a lot of times I just turn the music channels on, and then I just have the same way watching shows. Yeah,
it's rare that I watch. Like, if I watch TV, it's either like true crime or unsolved mysteries.
Yeah.
Anything outside of that, I'm not a fan of fiction. I don't really like fiction in books or, TV. So if I watch stuff, it's all, real life based stuff.
Real life stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
But most of the time I just kind of keep some music on in the background and just kind of hang out and do stuff around the house.
Yes. Oh, I do like to kind of like tidy up spaces. Like that can be kind of like a winding down activity for me. I need to be moving my body around more. I'm a little bit more on the not doing that right now so much. But I try to get out. Like I do like yoga and stretches and walking.
Cool.
So, yeah.
How would you define happiness?
Oh, I have one more thing to add to that list. I do get regular massages.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I find that to just be like, that's like my gift. I'm like, I just love it. It helps me so much.
I'm jealous.
It feels so good, and it helps. How do I define happiness? I think just to me, it just means being content. I think those are kind of synonymous words to me. You're kind of in a place of acceptance. I don't know. I have to say I'm not like a huge fan of that word because I think, I don't know. Because it kind of sounds fairy tale-y sort of happiness. But then again, like, being joyful and laughing and dancing and all of that is, gosh, that's living. So I think just being content.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next question is a little bit vulnerable as if all of these haven't already been vulnerable. What is the most embarrassing moment you've had as a clinician?
Okay, let me think about that for a minute. I think I've had a few. Well, the one comes in my, I know I've called people by the wrong names, and that's not good. And I get pretty embarrassed.
Yeah, that is embarrassing. That's happened to me before.
It's hard for me to say because I don't know that I have the times that I'm remembering are not so much that it was embarrassing. It was more like I started to feel like shame or something. And when I start to feel shame, like my face, I get like hot, like my face gets like, I just like burn and like my face gets really red. And I feel vulnerable, like in those moments with clients. And I'm like, oh geez, like, and I think that can feel embarrassing to me, to be honest. Because I'm either feeling I don't think it's feeling their shame. It's feeling when my shame is triggered, for whatever reason. And I feel kind of exposed. So that can be kind of uncomfortable and embarrassing in a session.
I could see that.
Yeah. I'm sure I've done some really embarrassing things. I got it.
All right.
This is bad. I don't know if you've ever had something like this happen, but this was like an every other week client. And, you know how sometimes like when, like, I don't know, like if you write in like your every other week clients and then then they cancel and then they want to come in the next week and then that sets everything. I don't know so anyway, it was one of those kinds of circumstances. And, I think it happened like twice with someone. Oh my gosh. I also, it happens once and then it happened again. And it was just, she called me and I was actually like on a vacation and I was like, why is she calling me? And then I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, she left me a message and she's like, yeah, I'm at your office. It's like 4:10 or whatever. I'm like, and I'm in the beach or something. I was like, oh my gosh, I did it again. So yes, I'm human. I really messed up. And I was horribly embarrassed. Yeah. I wrote her an email afterwards, and I offered, like, I think I tried to remedy it and say, next session's free, whatever. And, hey, I'm really, whatever. And yeah, she was like, I'm going somewhere else. I felt, yeah, I know. And I really enjoyed working with this woman. She was great. But it was, it's like, we are human and we mess up sometimes. So yeah,
we do.
I felt really bad. I'm like, oh God, she's probably telling stories about her therapist that screwed up the calendar twice.
I've double booked myself before, and that was pretty awful because both showed up at the same time.
Oh gosh, that's horrible. Yes.
So I can relate.
That's funny. I've been double booked. My therapist double booked me. So, but I've never done it. And I was cool with it. I'm like, it happens.
Yeah. No, I mean, and when it comes, we're therapists. We're not, business administrative people, a lot of us,
Right.
And it's a lot to manage.
Yeah. It really is. Yeah.
Well, Lisa, is there anything else you think would be good for a potential client or other therapists to know about you or non-ordinary experiences?
Okay, so I want to just give credit where credit is due. The term non-ordinary experiences came from a woman that I went to grad school with named Nicole Gruel. And she was actually getting her PhD, and I was one of her researchees, and she wrote a book, and she kind of coined that phrase, non-ordinary experiences. And I remember I was like, what a great way to describe those. And so anyway, that's she lives in Australia, I believe. So really super cool chick. But anyway, that's where that term came from, and I've just wanted to make sure that I credited her for that. Yeah.
That's good of you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's it. I'm good.
Thanks for being on the show, Lisa.
You're welcome.
The next question. The next question. The next question. The next question.
Thank you for listening to NextQuest Podcast. I learned something new today, and I hope you did too. Stay tuned for next week's episode featuring Daniel Linder, licensed marriage and family therapist, who will be discussing his practice in an area of specialty, the effects of stigma and the internalization of social conditioning on mental health. NextQuest Podcast is sponsored by Jan Dimmitt Resources. Save yourself the time and stress of credentialing and let the experts at Jan Dimmitt Resources do what they do best. For over 20 years, Jan Dimmitt Resources has provided administrative support and credentialing services to mental health professionals in Texas and beyond. Visit their website at jandimmitt.com. That is JANDIMMITT.com, or call 512-731-5725 for more information on all the ways they can make running your practice easier for you. NextQuest Podcasts rely solely on donations to keep this project going. Please consider becoming a patron on my Patreon page at www.patreon, that's patreon.com/NextQuestPodcast, or you can make a one-time donation on my website at www.nextquestcounseling.com/aboutnextquestpodcast. You can also support the podcast by liking our Facebook page. Until next question, this is Noah Garcia signing off.